I used to have a huge binge drinking problem for like 14 years. I no longer even think about craving alcohol, like at all. I never would have believed that a person could naturally just go from being an active alcoholic to literally effortless sobriety just through meditation alone. If you're interested in a 10-day Vipassana meditation course, you may have already checked out videos like these.
You're waking up at 4 a.m.
No speaking, no eye contact.
I just completed a 10-day meditation course. It was pretty amazing.
And the course you're considering is probably taught by SN Goenka because he was able to scale his organization to 200 plus Vipassana centers all over the world. These videos can be super helpful, but by their nature, and I've made some videos like this myself, they tell you about a course experience after it's over. So I've done 27 or so Vipassana courses now, including a 20-day course. Though you're considered to be a mature student if you've done the number of courses that I've done, I still obviously have a ton of shit to work through, which you'll know if you've ever watched this channel. 19 of those courses were at various Goenka centers. The rest of the courses I've done were at the IMC, the center that Goenka learned at, which was taken over by one of his contemporaries after his teacher died. Because I'm what Goenka referred to as an old student, that gives me access to an app that allows me to run a course at my home. So in this video, I complete that course in real time. I share the ups and downs and a bunch of other unflattering stuff. My hope is that this will give you a better understanding of the actual experience of Vipassana as it's happening through the lens of somebody who has benefited from Vipassana in ways that I never could have imagined. So much so that the social good organization I founded, Seeds, is working to transcend capitalism and empowering folks to build wealth through giving, with an ultimate goal of supporting more people in practicing Vipassana if they feel like doing so. If you're a more developed student and you've done some courses, this video also has some insight regarding Goenka's approach and how it changed from both what his teacher Ba Khin taught, as well as how it differs from what's currently taught at the IMC. Okay, this is the course schedule. Some videos I've seen claim that you have to meditate for 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day in a Goenka course, and I just want to make clear that for new students especially, that's simply not the case. The schedule does require that you're in the meditation hall for 3-hour-long group sits per day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and then again in the evening, for a discourse from Goenka, which is usually a little over an hour, and then for a 35-ish minute group meditation at the end of the day, depending on how long the discourse goes. You also have the option to meditate through other periods of the day, beginning at 4:30 a.m. I've obviously had to adapt this approach a little bit to fit my situation at my little house in Portland with my dog, and I'll share more about the specifics of that in a bit. Lastly, and I wish I didn't feel the need to verbally state this, but I'm fat. I'm currently a year into eating disorder recovery. I'm gonna make a video about that actually, and when it's done, I'll link it here. And as I've finally fed my body the food that it was asking for after years of restriction, I've gained a ton of scale weight. I wanted to treat this video like they treated Jonah Hill and Get Him to the Greek. He's fat and it's never mentioned in any way. It never intersects in any way with the plot. I remember thinking about how of the future and dope that seemed, especially for a movie made in 2010. But in my experience, too many men on the internet in 2025 still treat fat women and women generally really badly, even when all they're doing is literally silently meditating. So I guess I just wanted to get ahead of that here. You'll see in the video that this is one of my biggest triggers, aka Sankara. That is to say, abuse and mistreatment of the feminine. And all the trauma that I'm carrying surrounding that kept coming up for me through the duration of this course. To be fair, I can't entirely blame internet men. When I was editing this video, I was confronted with how fat this body is right now in a way that I don't have to be going about my day-to-day life. And it legit almost re-triggered the eating disorder, but it didn't. And that's maybe the biggest lesson that I hope to share with you. All of the aversion we have about our bodies or about what's going on with people in the external world, aversion we have about anything at all, is fodder for Vipassana. And though it takes time, Vipassana can eventually help us release it at the root. For good. It's 2 days until I'm doing my Vipassana self-course. Really excited. I feel really good today. Okay, so here are the rules. I'm going to use the old student app that Goenka provides. You literally just turn it on and then it just tells you when to do everything, and it includes his discourse. I'm not going to stick to the old student eating schedule where you're not supposed to eat solid food after lunch because I'm still going through eating disorder recovery and I don't want to mess up progress that I made. Also, I think it's a fairly arbitrary thing. As I understand, Ba Khin, who was Goenka's teacher, borrowed this practice of not feeding people after lunch because monks do this on like lunar holidays or something, like on special occasions, typically for like one day, not for like 10 days where you're not eating dinner. And so I've done it a bunch. And when I did a 20-day course, I only ate one meal a day there. They didn't like tell me to do that, but that was just the way it worked, except for I think one day. I think I ate breakfast like the first day, but the rest of the time I just ate lunch. And it really didn't help. I also know that he changed that practice. At his courses, his 10-day courses, he was only giving people one meal a day, and then he changed that over time to give them 2 meals a day, because he apparently realized that that was better for meditation. I'm actually gonna let myself just like eat whenever I'm hungry, and I'm gonna have to prepare food for myself too. That will take time, you know, that you don't spend when you're at a center. During the group sits, where at the courses they ask you to be in the meditation hall with everybody else, unless you're more advanced and then you can go in like the pagoda. I'm gonna do those live, vertical lives on YouTube. I'm not gonna interact with anybody like at all. I have been finding that those are really like awesome actually for accountability. So it'll kind of mimic that sense of, you know, you're in the meditation hall where everybody else is, and it strengthens your practice because there are other people there kind of thing. I'm not going to be consuming any content of any kind on any device, although I will still have an internet connection here, of course, so that makes things more challenging. And I think that's it. We'll see how it goes. Hello! It's supposed to storm soon. I love storms. It's like, I don't know, 6 o'clock the night I'm starting the Vipassana course. I'm so tired. I'm drinking coffee like at night just to push through. I used to do that all the time, and that's actually one of the unhealthy habits that I think Vipassana has helped me with a lot. But I was made to do this like legal briefing that had to be submitted by 9 a.m. this morning, and I almost pulled an all-nighter to get it done in like one of the many corporate battles that I'm in right now, where I'm like representing myself even though I have no legal training, to try and stand up to these like various corporations. I talk about it in the video where I got robbed. It's getting better, but I had this session with an astrologer not too long ago, and she said that my chart says that I keep getting pushed into the fight, and that so totally resonates because I definitely get super drained by it and don't enjoy it, but feel like it constantly happens, where there's just something so egregious that I have to stand up to it. And I do, but it takes time and it takes a lot out of me energetically and emotionally and stuff. So we'll see how much of that clears during this course, because that's kind of like the most active top layer of Sankara, of like trauma. And a lot of times I find that if it's like right there, obviously at the top and sort of in my awareness, my conscious awareness, that's when it's really ready to start releasing if I just do Vipassana. I have a little bit more work that I have to do before the course starts as well. And then that's it. I'm really looking forward to being off the grid and just doing it. I'm also so sweaty and dirty. I'm hoping that doing this will be beneficial to maybe even many in the future who might see this video. And we'll see if you can notice a change in my demeanor and like the lightness about me, because that totally sometimes happens. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I undertake the rule of training to abstain from killing living creatures. I undertake the rule of training to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake the rule of training to abstain from wrong speech. I surrender myself completely to the Buddha for proper guidance and protection. I just got done with the third group meditation for today, which means the day is pretty much over, almost over. There's still a discourse and then a little bit of a group meditation after that. It feels weird talking already. This is probably the hardest first day of a course I've had in a really long time, which means the sankhara, the trauma in the mind-body complex are really gnarly. And I'm super tired. And I used to get really tired at the beginning of courses for like the first few days. But a big part of the reason back then was because I would stop drinking coffee at the courses and I was super caffeine dependent. And I think I'm less dependent on it now, but I'm drinking coffee. I drank coffee today and I was still super tired. And that's a way sankhara can show themselves. It's like they do all these things to try and get you to stop meditating, because when you meditate, that forces them out of your mind-body complex so that you're free of them. And yeah, one of the things they do is make you super tired. There's this Pali word, that's the language the Buddha spoke. Nivarna, I think is how it's pronounced. The enemies, the 5 enemies of the meditator. And one of those is tiredness, extreme tiredness. But I can already feel as I'm talking, I'm smiling more. I have a bigger smile than I've had in a while. So some stuff is clearing. It felt like the physical sensation of a weight around sort of like my shoulders and my chest lifting toward the beginning of this last session. It's day 2 at tea time. I am so totally lethargic and exhausted, and I got enough sleep. It's the sankhara coming up. I keep having thoughts about what this world does to women and what it does to feminine energy, and how so few people are aware or even care if they have some awareness. But it's this sankhara surfacing, and it makes sense that it would be showing up so early in this course and so strongly, because it's probably the sankhara that I'm most conscious of in my regular day-to-day life. And it's also a sankhara that I think goes back maybe hundreds of past lives. I think it goes back to like the fall of Atlantis, at least. People say that was, what, 13,000 years ago or something. And it's gnarly, man. It used to be that 11th course that I did, which was at a center. I didn't start doing self-courses at home until much more recently. The 11th course was the hardest course I'd ever done. And it seemed to be because a lot of stuff about abandonment by my mother in this life was coming up. It seemed like it was showing up in like pain and discomfort in my lower left back, sort of up to like midway. And I have some stuff showing up in terms of physical sensations and discomfort in that part of my body again now. So it's been challenging so far. We'll see if it seems like this winds up being the most difficult course I've done. up today, I was already pissed off about like how warm it was in the room, and I've already done several takes of this because I'm mad about not coming out the way that I want them to. I'm just irritable. That's encouraging that that is at the top, like that's surfacing this layer of anger and frustration. I really hope that that clears because it would help a lot if I could get rid of that. Goenka talks about how when you have anger surfacing, it can manifest as heat. I just finished like a 45-minute meditation, like 15 minutes into it. I was so hot at the beginning, so it was like more evidence that anger was on the surface and clearing. And like 15 minutes into the meditation, I put in a blanket because it's actually pretty chilly in this house right now. And I realized as I was meditating too, I thought about this recent Caroline Winkler YouTube video. I've watched a lot of her videos. She does some creative stuff that I admire with filmmaking, the video making. She said that for her, the camera felt like a friend. And I realized just now as I was meditating that the camera doesn't feel like a friend to me still. I'm still going into this assuming that I'm speaking to people that hate me. And I know that comes from my family of origin. And then it becomes this thing that you keep manifesting until you've healed the root sankhara behind it. That was really showing up this morning in how difficult it was to speak to the camera and how much I like disliked everything I was saying. And I realized in this meditation set that I just did that I'm in that state almost all of the time when I'm filming. I'm not like relaxing and having fun. And that's the place I want to get to. And I think that's where I'm meant to get to as well. I think it's important for like the journey of this life's path, that I get to that level of comfort and like silliness. And I already feel like looking at the camera right now, more neutral. I don't feel like I'm going into this as though I need to be defended. It seems to be showing that the sankhara is on the surface and trying to clear. And also like the 44-minute meditation that I just did, it went pretty fast. And that's a really good sign that stuff is clearing. It's when things are trying to come up that are gnarlier that, you know, a meditation session can feel really long or especially difficult, and that one didn't. It just kind of breezed by. This sankhara is like so on the surface that it was just like ready to clear. It seemed like almost as soon as I sat down and actually started meditating. It wasn't as bad this morning in terms of tiredness, so some of that cleared. I was a lot less lethargic, but then this afternoon I was feeling a lot of restlessness. The puppy is here. It was a lot more like fidgety, so the sankhara was showing up in a different way. Some craving was coming through as well. Previously it was almost entirely aversion. I was thinking about different stuff that I was upset about, some things that I'm like very angry about and have a lot of grief about, like the way the feminine is treated on earth. And then today, like craving that was coming up was more like, I really want to watch The Sopranos, even though I've watched the entirety of that series twice in the last year and a half. And I wanted to play the game Civilization 4. So I can do those things a week from tomorrow whenever the course is over. But I was aware as it was happening that these were different ways to try and throw me off the meditation, which tells me that I am making legit progress, or else it wouldn't be trying to throw me off, you know? I'm having a little bit of like the fact that I'm having to cook and clean and everything and take care of everything myself, obviously, is distracting to some extent. It's making me think about how nice it would be to have a partner or a friend or somebody who could take care of that while I was sitting, and then I could do the same for them. That would be really awesome. Maybe in the future I can somehow help to create a way for us to connect with each other so we can do that when we want to. But since I don't have that and I have to think about the logistics of cleaning and stuff and cooking, it's requiring me to think about it. Whereas if I were at a center, for example, and it were just taken care of for me by the wonderful volunteers, then I would be going more deeply into other stuff that I could clear that would, leave me potentially feeling even happier at the end of the course, which isn't to say that, everything is an opportunity to practice equanimity and awareness. You can meditate through everything that happens. That's where you get eventually if you keep going in the practice. You start doing it continuously. And then on the flip side, the benefit to being here in this house by myself with my dog is that when you're at a course, I've personally in the past had many experiences where I felt agitated by the agitations in another meditator. And then I would think about that. And then in that case, that would become the thing that I used to sort of avoid going into my deeper stuff. It's just me here. So I can get annoyed with, the logistics of making something or whatever. Overall, today was a little bit less difficult. Tomorrow's Vipassana day. I'm starting to feel a lot better. Maybe you can already see it. Last night as I was falling asleep, I was really enjoying the thoughts I was having. I was thinking about all this fun stuff I wanted to do and really looking forward to things in the future. The negativity that had been in my thoughts, anger and frustration about the way this world is, and also just this sort of like perpetual fear of attack, which of course then makes you align with it more. You manifest it. That wasn't present. Which was really, it wasn't even that it was a relief, it just was a new state and I was enjoying it. And at the same time, I understand that I can't get attached to that, but I don't remember in previous courses if that had come in so soon, like so early in a course. I don't know. And yesterday was Vipassana day, the day that we start actually practicing Vipassana. The days leading up to that are Anapana meditation and getting solid Shila so that we have this foundation of morality so that Vipassana will work because it can't work without those building blocks. That's what the Eightfold Noble Path is. It falls into these three categories, Shila, Samadhi, and then Panya, which is what Vipassana is, wisdom to see things as they really are. At the Goenka courses, he starts teaching Vipassana in the afternoon of day 4. And in this app that I'm using, they don't include the Vipassana instructions. Like he actually goes through and does this guided session when he's first teaching Vipassana at the courses themselves. And the app didn't include Anapana instructions either. And I assume some of that is so that new students don't stumble on the app and try to use it before they've actually learned how to do the stuff. But maybe some of it is just the app design isn't super sophisticated because it also didn't change the schedule yesterday. And the schedule on day 4 is a little different because he's introducing Vipassana. But anyway, for maybe more experienced students who have done some Goenka courses who might watch this video. So I got kicked out of the Goenka centers. I am banned from all of them, all 200 plus Goenka centers around the world. And it happened after I spoke up about some issues at a center, specifically with one particular teacher. That teacher was then allowed to unilaterally ban me from all the centers across the globe. It was devastating to me at the time, but I'm going to share more about how I understand now that it was a blessing, and I think actually a function of good karma. Some good karma that I had and how that relates to how Goenka teaches Vipassana. It happened after I sat my first and only 20-day. There are a bunch of requirements and stuff that you have to build up to in order to be able to be allowed to sit that course. In a session where a mandatory session where I had to talk to the teacher, I just voiced some concerns and some issues and she got really angry and then later lied about being upset. I want to be super clear that anytime there's an abuse of power or a failure to be honest, that means somebody is not properly practicing Vipassana. So even though this happened, Vipassana itself, I'm completely convinced, is the most wonderful thing a human can find. I was seeking and then I found it and I was like, I just knew that I had found the way out. But I don't think that there are too many super highly developed humans alive on Earth at this time. And Ba Khin, Goenka's teacher, talked about that during his time as well. During the time of the Buddha, there were a ton of people who had incarnated at that time to reach liberation and incarnated at the same time as the Buddha, so that they could, so that he would figure out how to do it and then they would be nearby and he would teach them. I was told in the 45-day course that Goenka teaches, Goenka actually mentions in the discourses, I haven't been able to hear this myself because I didn't get that far before they booted me, but Goenka apparently says that now is a time for the people coming to Vipassana to learn how to do it, and then many of those people are going to teach it. And it really feels to me like that's going to be my eventual role once I've developed enough and I have more work cut out for me in that regard for sure. But anyway, because I was kicked out of the Goenka courses, at first it was, one of the most upsetting things I've ever experienced, because I felt that I had found a home there in a way that I hadn't experienced anywhere else on Earth. And also, Goenka seemed to have worked through his misogyny, and therefore the centers that he built and scaled, they still use discourses that he recorded, even though he's been dead for going on 12 years now. Because he didn't have the sankara of misogyny, he managed to scale this organization. It didn't have misofem, it didn't have misogyny. Like, it wasn't coming from him. I mean, it definitely showed up in this teacher that banned me, for example. But that was such it was like an oasis for me, because no other organization that I've ever interacted with in any capacity has ever had that. All of them have this wounded masculine energy that seeps into the design or is structurally a part of the design. It's one of the biggest, deepest sankara that I have in this life, and I think probably for many lives. So to be told that I could never access that again was crushing. But over time, of course, the thing is, anyone can meditate whenever you feel like it, wherever you are. So it was teaching me not to be attached specifically to the Goenka centers, and, reminding me that I can access this through myself. I can keep doing Vipassana and clearing out more and more sankara and finding that nibbanic peace within, the phrase that Goenka uses a lot. Nibbana is the Pali word. Nirvana is the Sanskrit word. 8 or 9 months after I'd been kicked out of the Goenka organization, I started Googling other students of Ba Khin who went on to become teachers themselves, as Goenka had done. Mother Sayamagi, who had taken over for Ba Khin at the center in Burma, and who then went to England and had scaled a few centers around the world. I think there are 6. She's also passed away, so it's like her students who are now running the centers. Those centers were still operational, and there was one in the States in Maryland. So I went to that center. What I discovered there is that she had retained this sequence, a way of doing the body scan whenever you first learn Vipassana, that Ba Khin had come up with, because he discovered that it helps students understand anicca, constant change, more quickly. It was helpful for lay people who could only come away for a 10-day course. And so he taught this in his courses. So this is what Goenka would have learned as well, as I understand. But Goenka stopped teaching this particular sequence. And I suspect it's because it doesn't seem quote unquote scientific. He stresses that a lot in the discourses that we listen to in the West, which were recorded in 1991 in Berkeley, I think in California. So it seems like when he came to the States, I think first in the 80s, he saw this need to really ground what he was teaching in this idea of science. And I've heard a current teacher who sat with Goenka in India in the early 70s, like right around the time he was just starting to teach. He actually sat with him during the 72-hour war between India and I guess it would have been Pakistan, I think. Like during the course, this war was going on, and he decided to stay, and then the war ended in 72 hours. This person who sat with Goenka back then as like a teenager, he said that Goenka used to talk a lot more about the devas, another plane of existence in the 31 planes that we can incarnate on. And that told me that he would go more into what we consider, I guess, in the West to be like esoterica, the sort of more, to me, more interesting spiritual elements. And he kind of abandoned that when he came to the West to teach. And I think that was a bit of a function of a sankara of Goenka's, that now we've lost something because that isn't present in his discourses. And I think in relation to that, he stopped teaching the sequence that Ba Khin came up with. But because they still teach it at the International Meditation Center, I was amazed, y'all, to see how much it really did help. Another old student told me once that very few of Goenka's students have reached Banga. One of the stages that you go through as you're developing in Vipassana, the third of 10 stages that Ba Khin talks about. And once you've reached Banga, it's a lot easier to get back to that understanding of anicca, of constant change. And this sequence that they teach at the IMC that Ba Khin came up with helped me get to a deeper, quicker Banga than I'd ever experienced before. The other piece of that, though, is that at the IMC, and I assume that Ba Khin did this as well, they have you do Anapana for an extra day. So you've developed even more Samasamadhi and you're better able to focus. And Goenka changed that. And I've reflected on whether or not that was a mistake on Goenka's part. Like, I see a lot of Goenka students not understanding the true importance of Anapana, thinking that maybe they should skip it or shorten it. Even at the sort of more advanced levels, like I remember reading in this forum, it was a student who was gonna go sit a 20-day. They were a more mature student. They were asking if they should skip or shorten the Anapana session of that course. The way Goenka has it set up, the beginning third of each course is Anapana, and then you move on to Vipassana. For example, in a 30-day, you do 10 days of Anapana and then 20 days of Vipassana. And I think that Goenka maybe did make a mistake there. If I'm thinking about like what I feel the ideal course would be like, I think keeping that additional day of Anapana actually is helpful. And the other piece of that is that Goenka's courses are actually a day longer than Ba Khin's were, which was a really smart change in terms of the structure, I think. A lot of the changes he made, I think, are really helpful to students, but certain things I think came from a Sankara in Goenka and therefore aren't necessarily for the highest good. To be clear, Goenka does a really good job of repeatedly saying that we're not here to condemn other practices. And I want to be sure to state that too. I don't mean to sound overly critical, even though I obviously still have some sankara about the Goenka organization banning me forever. My intention in identifying problems there, which I think probably also contributed to my being banned, is to try and help all of us best understand how to practice Vipassana so that we can become as happy as possible through Vipassana. So I think that in terms of my getting kicked out of the Goenka centers, Goenka tells the story in the discourses in the 10-day, right after the Buddha died. One of the monks in the Sangha was like, yay, we don't have to follow all these rules that he created anymore. And Goenka shares that story as an example of sometimes there's something unwholesome, and out of that unwholesome act, something wholesome can come. You know, because this monk said that, the other monks then realized that they should actually make sure to record everything that the Buddha had told them to the best of their ability. And so they did. In this case, it was an unwholesome action that I was globally banned from every Goenka center for speaking up about issues with this particular teacher. That teacher shouldn't have been allowed to then ban me unilaterally. Clearly, I still have some sankara about what happened there. But I think the outcome of that is a wholesome thing, because I found this other sequence that they still teach at the IMC that Ba Khin taught that Goenka no longer teaches. And I also saw other elements of what Ba Khin taught because they retained more of it at the IMC. And now I know this thing, like if I hadn't gotten kicked out of the Goenka organization, I would have continued there. I would have done 30 days, whatever. And I probably would have eventually become a teacher within the Goenka organization. And I think because I got kicked out, it's helping me out so that I can consider how to create what I understand to be a closer to ideal meditation center in the future. So that's this incredible gift. I also saw at the IMC that Mother Sayamagi stopped teaching sittings of Aditan. Ba Khin taught these, and Goenka taught them as well. When I was talking earlier about how happy I felt, how much better I felt, particularly like last night as I was falling asleep, how I had almost exclusively positive thoughts. A big part of the reason for that is because I'd just done that sitting of Aditan at night. So 3 times a day, you try your best not to open your hands, to open your legs, or to open your eyes. And if you do, say you move 4 times in a session, then the next session you just try to only move 3 times. I think it can sound more intense than it should sound because it is so helpful, y'all. It's introduced on day 4, the night of day 4. And if you're a more advanced student and you're interested in more specific thoughts comparing Goenka's approach and the IMC's approach, let me know. I can make a whole video about it. I don't see anyone else talking about it because like the people that have gone as deep into Goenka as I did tend to keep going on the Goenka path. Like they don't usually get kicked out. And IMC people aren't going back to Goenka. A lot of them left Goenka because they found Goenka to be too strict. I don't have the sankara of striving But I found that people that seem to have this like Enneagram type 3 Sankara of like thinking they need to push themselves, they'll really have a reaction to Goenka. And then a lot of those people ended up at the IMC, including some of the people that are 80 years old or so, who are now running some of these centers, who sat with Goenka in the 70s, when I'm sure he was a lot more strict than he eventually came to be as he mellowed out through the practice. But I learned at the IMC that Ba Khin used to have students do Adatan, and he would like light a candle and he would just have them sit there until the candle burnt out. And it was really difficult to do this. It was for much longer than an hour, as I understand. And eventually Mother Sayamagi went to him and said, I don't think this is actually helping students. I think we should stop doing this because then they're striving and it's not helping them to develop equanimity and the other paramis that the practice is meant to help them develop. And Ba Khin considered this and decided that she was right. And after that, he restricted the Adatan sittings to 1 hour. This is actually in a frame at IMC centers, this story. But what they don't mention is that Mother Sayamagi then stopped asking students to do Adatan altogether. And I think that the teachers running those centers now, who are all boomer age, if not like greatest generation, many of them did sit at least a course or two with Goenka back in the day. But as I understand, most of them didn't come up in the practice with this understanding of how beneficial Adatan is. And so that's lost at the IMC centers. And you can really see it in terms of the development of the older meditators. I haven't seen very developed older meditators at the IMC courses. And I think this lack of sittings of Adatan is a huge, huge part of why. At the Goenka centers, then, to be fair, I only saw, I would say, 3 teachers. And I had been to like 12 different Goenka sites and centers over the course of my tenure. I only saw, I think, 3 teachers who I would say were quite developed. There can be a little bit of a competitive thing that shows up at Goenka centers, which can then translate into sort of less compassion. And I would do Adatan at the courses at the IMC. I think I've done 5 courses at 2 IMC centers, the one in the States and also like the main one in the UK. Even though they didn't teach it, I would still start doing it. So I was still seeing benefits from it there. But then that's the other thing too, because Adatan isn't present and students therefore aren't going as deep at the IMC centers, the atmosphere also isn't as supportive as it would otherwise be. So, I mean, if you're considering a course, Adatan is so, like, it helps you so much. I can't overstate how much it helps. It just helps you, it helps you go so much deeper. Anyway, I think this was top of mind because in doing Adatan yesterday on day 4, I was really reminded of just like how much deeper you go whenever you start doing it, and how much it really, really helps. I don't even feel like talking. So I had some huge clearings and I was feeling really great, 100 times better than I was before I started this. And then, as happens, in the last, I don't know, 12 hours or something, more stuff started to come on the surface because Sankara are clearing, so more junk that needs to get out came on the surface, and then I was feeling all of that as it's clearing, because you have to feel it in order to be able to let it go. So I had more irritation and more obscure thoughts about stuff that I haven't considered in years. Small things like a person I met once who behaved a certain way that was weird and I didn't understand and it was hurtful, and I don't know how much of it is my fault and how much of it is just totally their thing, stuff like that. Whereas like I remember my first course, the most obvious negative experiences that I had had, like stuff with my abusive dad and abusive boyfriends, that was what was coming on the surface because that was the biggest stuff that I was carrying that needed to clear. Goenka talks about how our experience gets subtler and subtler. So it makes sense that some of the stuff that's coming up now is stuff I haven't thought about in a long time that wasn't that big of a deal, but still clearly I've carried with me. It still bothers me to some extent. And then in the group sit in the afternoon, my right leg, I can feel it right now, it still has aches and pains in it. And it's not because of a physical injury or anything that I'm aware of, or just sankara are in it for some reason. And that's the thing that I see a lot of like newer students not necessarily getting right away or forgetting, which is that when we have these aches and pains, it's often not because of a physical injury. And if it is, it could be related to a physical injury and could like make the physical injury likelier to happen in that spot because sankara are carried there. I often feel like I have this like intellectual understanding of the origins of some of this stuff, but I don't know what is going on with this leg. And in the afternoon sit, it started hurting badly enough that I actually like moved it, like opened my eyes and looked at the clock and moved my leg. The sitting of Adatan, I don't think I've straight up moved because something hurt like that since maybe like my first course or something. So that seems like there's really something in there that's difficult, that's trying to come out. Can you see how agitated I am right now? Again, I'm coming into this like I can't speak to the camera like it's a friend. I'm speaking to the camera like I'm assuming, you know, like talking to people who hate me or who have no interest in what I have to say. And I really hope that that can clear soon because it's been hard to have to live a life where it's felt like that, you know? I've also gotten like really hungry, but I'm in a place where I don't want to eat. It's not a restriction thing, although I have to be careful to not let it become a restriction thing. From experience, I know that it's that thing that you can get into when you're meditating at a course where you feel the hunger, but you're not adding the mental sankara to the hunger. So it's way easier to not care about. Since part of my intention coming into this was to eat whenever my body was hungry and to not stick to the eating timetable because of the eating disorder recovery I'm going through. I want to make sure not to like fall into that. But it was kind of interesting to see that that was happening because that doesn't always happen for me during the course. It's like in the 20-day that I mentioned before where I ate one meal a day almost every day in that course, and it was a mistake because the hunger, I think, got in the way. It was a distraction. I'm also having more coming up about this body right now and how fat it is. It's like I'm more aware of it, more aversion to it has been coming up during this course. More like, whoa, like I'm really fat. Even though I know that at the same time, a big part of the whole process was to mentally become a quantumist about that, to not care, to be able to live in any body as fat or as thin as it might be without attaching a value judgment to that. And then on top of that, I know that the excess weight that I'm carrying, that I put on through this process, has been gradually coming off. Like I can tell, but I'm still, I don't know. I feel like it's this internalized male gaze, I guess. And it's specifically, there's the gong for the next group sit Adaton. But it's like the male gaze I've internalized is a specifically white, straight, cis male gaze, and it's like American, ages 25 to 34. It's exactly the demographic that YouTube keeps showing my videos to for some reason that I don't understand, and that's not who they're for. That demographic it's not interested in what I have to share. I'm getting fired up a little bit as I'm talking about it. So why is that still happening 14 months into consistently making long form videos? Hopefully this video will help to change that. It's like I'm thinking of myself as that viewer who's hostile toward me, and it's shitty. And I think all women have internalized that to some degree, some form of, certainly some form of the male gaze. And I just want it out of my head. I want it to go away. I want it to have no interaction with me whatsoever at all. And the masculine has been so centered, and masculine people have been so centered that they just like won't. And then I was also getting irritable thinking about like stuff with feminine energy and how no one fucking cares in the States. And that's clearly a huge sankara for me. Goenka talks about how sankara are either like your finger in the water, so they disappear immediately, or like a line on the beach, so by the end of the day it's gone, or like chiseled into rock. For sure this sankara is chiseled into rock for me. And I believe in past lives, clearly. I've talked about mine a lot on this channel, and I think we're a bunch of different things, probably on a bunch of different planets. The Buddha talked about how there were 31 different planes of existence and a 10,000 world system. I don't know, man, like irritated clearly, but it's so much subtler than it was before I started this course. I don't know if you can tell already, but I cleared some of that irritation in the last 2 group sits. I realized too that I could start talking to the camera like it's my dear friend Claire Danes, but she still has that quality that she had up until she was like 19, before I think Yale like drove it out of her with its unhealthy masculine energy. This like really embodied feminine thing. She had that quality of that girlfriend you have, like that one girl, you just love her so much. She's your dear friend and you just love her. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna pretend that the camera is Claire Danes. I wanted to record now because I realized something in the discourse tonight. Goenka talks a lot in this discourse about sensation and the importance of observing sensations as a way to get out of being a drunk, any craving that you might have, any aversion that you have. He talks about how they all produce sensations, and what we actually crave are the sensations. He doesn't mention once that I recall that what we're actually observing is that the sensations constantly change. And I think that is the root of what's gone awry at the Goenka centers. I should add that in the app, there is no recording of Goenka speaking during the meditation sessions themselves, like you would hear at a center. In the app, it's just silence with a gong. And to be fair, in those sessions, Goenka mentions the word anicca a lot. However, I still don't believe that he's emphasizing the idea enough that the point of observing sensations is to understand anicca, constant change. Because I've seen so many of his students either misunderstanding or forgetting that, including myself. At the Goenka centers, I reached a point where I thought I was experiencing sampajana nearly constantly. And sampajana is, by definition, I believe, it's constant awareness of change. But I thought because I was near constantly aware of sensations, that was sampajana. And that's a fatal misunderstanding. If that's what you think, you're missing the entire thing, because the entire thing is about helping us use different sense doors, whether it's sensations or any of the other 5 sense doors, to observe that this whole thing is constantly changing, because it is. That's what we need to understand constantly in order to get out of this. That's what the Satipatthana Sutta tells us. But Goenka emphasizes sensation so much. I think tonight's discourse made it clear that even he forgets at times that what we need to be observing is change, whether we're using sensations or something else. And I know, also because I got kicked out, like I later learned that Ba Khin, Goenka's teacher, experimented, and he decided that using the sensations as the sense door to teach lay students in 10-day courses was the most effective, efficient way to help them understand anicca, constant change. That's why sensations are used as the object. There are a lot of Goenka students who think that the sensations are the thing, and they aren't. It's change. The whole point is observing change. And I myself, I'd still have that like misguided conception if I hadn't gotten kicked out of Goenka. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. I did my first course over my 29th birthday, so exactly 12 years ago now. And it was at the center in Massachusetts. It's like the center that's closest to New York. It's like 3 hours away. Actually, the land that my tiny house is built on is in that town, that small town of like less than 2,000 people. And I bought the land there specifically because the center is in that town. So that was another reason that, like, when I got kicked out, it felt more devastating because I had, you know, these hopes and plans that I would build a house there and spend a good amount of time there and I could volunteer at the center and all that stuff. But it just wasn't meant to happen that way. Anyway, at that first course, before it started, I was talking to these girls who were from the city. And I remember I mentioned to this girl, Crystal, that my birthday was April 2nd. I just mentioned it offhand. And then on the day of, on my birthday itself, we're not supposed to talk, right? It's noble silence. At lunchtime, she took a plate and put like honey on the plate, and in Rice Krispies, she spelled out happy birthday. And then she like brought it over and like put it in front of me and just walked away. I have a chill as I'm describing it. It's still like one of the nicest things a person has done for me. It's definitely one of the nicest, if not the nicest birthday gifts I think I've ever gotten, because it was so thoughtful and it was a total surprise. So thank you, Crystal, wherever you are. Yo, a lot cleared in this morning session. I've never heard anyone say this before, so if you've done courses, let me know if this is relatable to you. But sometimes for me, when Sankara are clearing, just happened right now in my ear, it'll almost feel like like gas, but not gas. It's kind of hard to describe. I mean, what just happened in my ear, there's congestion on this side of my head, which I feel confident is related to this block I've had in the front of my face for a long time, which I think has to do with some trippy stuff. I talk about it in one of my past lives videos. But for the past several months, I can't hear as well out of this ear because there's this congestion. So just now, whatever cleared made it slightly easier to hear. With other stuff that clears in my body, it just feels like, yeah, just like, I don't have a better way to describe it. It isn't gas, but it feels like kind of like that. That's the closest comparison that I have. And a lot of that was happening in this morning session. And I was thinking a lot of thoughts about feeling hated and carrying that around with me. And I was remembering things from when I made my first and only film to date, which I started when I was 25. It was a documentary about the impact of microloans on women around the world. I was just thinking yesterday about how when I initially started the project, the boring first working title was Capitalism and Charity, something, and how that's totally been the thread since then, right? Like Seeds is about transcending capitalism and transcending the nonprofit for-profit binary. And I was keyed into that theme even back then. Something got triggered and I got sent down this journey that I think is a big part of the path for this life. Just that thing of feeling hated. I had to remind myself that I can talk to the camera like it's my dear friend, Claire Danes, and how much I'm in the habit of still speaking and still trying, even though I'm going into every interaction assuming I'm going to be hated. And then I thought about, like, there's this woman, I found her on 23andMe in the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 months or something. And she had a high DNA match with me and I didn't know who she was. So I reached out to her to see like how we were related. And I found out that she had been adopted and didn't know who her biological parents were. So I ended up helping her discover that my great uncle, my paternal grandmother's brother, was her biological father. And she never knew him and he's been dead for almost 10 years or something. And yeah, so this is like thought process that I'm going through as I'm meditating. So I helped her out with that and stuff, and we were emailing, and she was really warm and was sharing about just personal things that were going on in her life. And then last fall when I got robbed and I redeemed a seed to ask for help, after she'd sent some email, I ended up sending her that link and saying this had happened, and if she was able to help, you know, it'd be appreciated. And I never heard from her again after that. And that feels, I mean, I don't want to get that snarky, but yeah, it definitely feels like she's a member of my family. But yeah, it just felt so awful and typical. And then I go into, like, I can roll with those thoughts. That's the thing they tell you not to do at the Goenka courses. Don't roll in those negative thoughts that are related to your sankhara. In this case, it's like my sankhara of feeling abandoned and hated, even though I helped or tried to help. And I think in that case, that's a pretty kind of substantial way of helping somebody. So I get, I guess, righteous thinking about that. Like, but then I went into, you know, the thoughts about what happened when I made my first film and mistakes I made and things I should have done differently and different ways I should have handled situations that weren't great. And it's true that I was 25 when I started it and I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have any experience managing people and I didn't have anyone around me who was good at that either. And I wasn't a good communicator either. So I can see all the perspective on that now, and I feel sad about a lot of the way it went because there was such a pure intention behind it. I wanted to make this film about helping women around the world, right? With money. Women in places where getting a loan for $4 or something could be life-changing. And then that ended up taking me directly into working on seeds, you know, after I realized that we shouldn't be giving loans, they should be gifts. And there could be another way to organize the system so that people can build wealth as they're giving gifts, which is what seeds is. And it all takes me back to the feeling hated thing, and I guess the loneliness thing. Like, it's such a wonderful gift to do these over my birthday. And I did courses at centers over my birthday for many years. Like, from my 29th birthday was in 2013. From there up until COVID, there was one year that I didn't go in 2014. And that year I like took a trip around the world and like gave a TEDx talk in Belgium and went to see a friend in Hong Kong and then ended up near Cleveland, Ohio, which is not too far from where I grew up, to like go to a friend's wedding. And that was very much the energy I was in that time, just like going and traveling. And then in more recent years, since getting kicked out of the Goenka centers, I've started doing self-courses over my birthday. Like, it is for sure, like by light years, the best gift I could possibly give to myself and receive over a birthday and at any time. But I'm also hopeful that, especially with like the type of clearing that I was experiencing this morning as I was sitting, that this thing that makes me feel hated, the sankhara, the loneliness of it, the thing about it that leads me to people that don't really care about me and aren't really interested in anything I have to offer, I'll stop. And so I hope that as these sankhara clear, relating to feeling shunned and hated, that I'm gonna find like my tribe or whatever on the other side of that. And then maybe on future birthdays, we'll do Vipassana courses together, or I'll feel, you know, like seen and appreciated, and what I have to offer will be received in its wholeness. And I also realized that this perpetual feeling of being shunned and being hated that I've been in I haven't been conscious of it always, but I think I've been in it since I was a very small child in this life. Just thinking about this morning, I realized that it's a barrier to understanding anatta, like no self. So they're the three concepts that we need to understand in order to reach full liberation. Anicca, everything is constantly changing. Dukkha, which is sometimes translated as misery, but I've seen another scholar talk about how a closer translation would just be that, like, this is a bummer. And then anatta, no self. And I think anatta is the hardest to understand. And while I'm in the sankhara, which is about this self feeling shunned, it's just this other barrier, I think, that gets in the way to comprehending what that even means. Just after the afternoon sitting in Vipassana, and my right leg started hurting, like, a lot again. I managed to not break Vipassana, although I was stretching it because I leaned. And I just wanted to share the experience of what that's like to not react, even though I kind of cheated, because I definitely reacted when I leaned, but I managed to hold on enough that I saw something cool happen. I was observing my right leg, doing the body scan, observing sensations, and the dominant sensation is pain. And Goenka talks about this, that when you're able to be equanimous with pain, then you won't add the mental pain to the physical pain, and therefore the experience of it will lessen. The pain won't be as bad. And that totally happened. From the knee down, the pain almost went away. And then the other thing that was happening was that as I was observing that leg, the thing I described earlier, where the sankhara clear, but it just happened actually right that second as I said it, because I am still doing some version of Vipassana at a certain level of my mind, even as I'm talking now. The thing started happening where as I was observing the pain in my right leg, the sensation of pain, the thing that isn't gas, but that's like the closest thing I can compare it to, that happens when a sankhara clears, started happening in other parts of my body, like the trunk of my body, my lower back, and the pain in my leg lessened as that happened too. What I understand is going on in that is that the sankhara causing the pain in the right leg was clearing, and so the pain was like leaving my body. I don't intellectually understand what the sankhara is, like I mentioned before, in the way that I feel that I understand the associated sankhara with like other physical sensations is. Like, for example, I was noticing a little bit of pain in my lower back earlier today, and I feel convinced that that pain, that physical pain, is associated with a sankhara about not getting support, not getting enough support. And I actually wonder if, you know, a lot of people have lower back pain. Thinking about The Sopranos again, how Polly at one point says something like, nobody really knows shit about backs. I wonder how much of the back pain that people experience, especially lower back pain, is related to sankhara about not getting enough support. I'm more mellowed out now. Some stuff cleared in that sit. And at the beginning, a lot of my thoughts were about like feminism and what's going on with a lack of any interest in feminism, really, in the United States, and my anger and frustration about that, and like how to speak about it. And then later on in the sit, those thoughts weren't coming up so much. Can you hear that puppy? What a pain. Yeah, so later on in the set, something relating to that Sankara apparently had cleared enough that my mind was no longer taking me to those thoughts. And to be clear, those thoughts are coming in even as I'm giving the majority of my attention to the meditation itself, to feeling the body sensations and moving my attention along the body. That's why we do Anapana at the beginning of a course, to develop that one-pointedness of mind, so that then we're prepared to do Vipassana and move that one-pointedness, in this case, along the sensations of the body, along the body structure. So yeah, birthday half over. Oh, related to that, can you tell that I am more grounded? I feel more grounded. Big time. Some of the Sankara coming up, I intellectually understood that it was about not finding my people on earth so far and being so isolated and not having support again. A lot of times even questioning, like, are people actually incarnated as humans now who will know what the fuck I'm talking about, will be interested in what I'm offering? Like, are those people even on earth? Because I feel like now I'm 41, today's my 41st birthday, and I think I'm pretty well traveled and I haven't found them yet. So there was sadness about that coming up, some grief, I think, that I still feel. So we'll see if more of that clears. It's lights out on day 7 and it was a good birthday. I just got a bunch of chores done in like 25 minutes or something. It's always interesting to see how much more efficient it makes you, and you do things so much more calmly as you're doing them so much more efficiently. Just a few days ago, it seemed like a challenge to even have the lights out at 10 o'clock whenever the schedule says, and it's not a challenge to do that now. I cleared a lot of stuff later on throughout the day, and I think I realized something. And again, it isn't important to intellectually understand this. In fact, they even discourage this type of thing that I'm about to share, because you can get kind of like caught up in trying to figure out why something is the way it is. Hands down, the most important thing is to practice. But I felt that I realized that the pain in my right leg, which came up again really strongly in a later sit today, I think that's where I'm holding the Sankara relating to grief and anger and hatred about what's happened to the feminine. So to feminine energy in everybody, and also specifically to female people. And I think that dates back to Atlantis. And I've talked on this channel a bunch about the crazy kind of experience I had remembering a past life that seemed like it was at Atlantis, and then getting that verified by a stranger when I was on the way to a Vipassana course. So that would make a lot of sense, that it hurts so much physically and that it's lasted for so long, you know? And in the discourse tonight, I noticed again, Goenka really emphasizes sensations, observing sensations with equanimity. He did mention once, that I recall, that we're observing sensations in order to understand anicca, constant change. And then he went on to talk more about how everything's changing. And he tells a story to help illustrate the point, the story about the two brothers with the two rings, if you've taken a course before. He's really not emphasizing the connection between observing sensations as a means to understand constant change, to understand anicca. And I definitely felt that I made a bunch of progress in his courses, but I felt like I was kind of hitting a wall, I guess. Like, I didn't feel like I made that much progress in the 20-day course, and I don't think I can find the 20-day discourses anywhere. The long course discourses are like kept internal at the organization. So I think, again, I got kicked out of those courses to come to understand this. And Goenka has by far scaled this the most, because he has over 200 centers around the world now, and this essential connection between observing sensations as a means to understand anicca, constant change, is not clear. So the energies or whatever must want me to make that clear. So I'll try. I still have a lot of development to do. I think I've made a lot of progress in this course already. Yeah, it really was a good birthday. Come on, sweetie. Okay, let's go. Go get your toy. It's tea time on day 8, and I had another pretty strong wave of Sankara come up in the middle of the day, and I was super lethargic and tired again, and then just like super irritable, and the irritation has stayed. During the group sit, the Aditon sit in the afternoon, my right leg did start hurting a lot again, like toward the end, but I was able to still stick to the rules of Aditon through the whole sit. I've just been having a lot of thoughts though of like how much I hate that we're trapped here, like trapped as humans on earth. And I was thinking about how when the Buddha got out, like when he reached full liberation, apparently what he said was, I have seen the builder of the house, meaning like the house is these bodies that we have to keep reincarnating into for millennia or whatever. But I don't think the text says anything about who that is or why we have to do this. I think it's about observing each other and integrating these experiences and that making the knowledge of what this is exponentially greater, because then there are so many more facets to it. And there's something about observing ourselves through Vipassana and then observing each other when we're incarnated as separate beings, or at least at the apparent level we're separate beings, and observing each other in that way and interacting with each other and giving each other feedback or whatever about what we're seeing so that we can help each other learn. The Buddha told Ananda that noble friendship is the whole path, this idea of helping each other along. And I know there's also a thing like when we meet somebody that we're triggered by, it's like it's the same sankara. Like they have the same unhealed sankara that we have, and then they interact with each other and we trigger each other. It might be like seemingly like the mirror image of that sankara. Like in my case, for example, recently doing these vertical lives where I'm just meditating, but before I started this course, look at this dog again. What's his deal? Are you finished? Don't drag your butt on my bed. Somebody in the vertical live literally talked about being me with other people. And that's like probably the most horrible thing a person could say anyway in a vertical live, but it's probably the most triggering thing for me. So it triggers my sankara about wanting to fucking destroy that person and like despising them and hating them to their very core. And then on their side, it's whatever misogynistic bullshit that they're going through. We're just stuck here though, man. Like I know I will keep going through it. And I know sooner or later this will clear. The wounding, the grieving, and the rage about what this world does to the feminine. I'm thinking that this wounding and this grief and this fucking, it's like disdain, but like resignation too, that we have to be stuck on earth as humans. I think that goes even deeper, which makes sense. And there are these stages that Ba Khin talked about, these stages of development of Vipassana, and starting to feel like this world is just full of negative whatever and really wanting to get out of it. That's at the later stages. And I've known that I've been in that range at least like 6 years or so. It showed up really strongly as a sankara in a course that I did in October of 2019 in British Columbia. And it was so strong and so difficult that I actually went and talked to the teacher on day 5. I almost never talked to them at all, let alone mid-course or something. And she wasn't really that helpful. Later that night at around 5 o'clock, I remember, it just cleared and I felt so much better. And it was amazing to see how that change happened. And I know this will be something similar. It's like all in Nietzsche, all of this will change. That's the whole point. That's what we're trying to learn. It's just harder, I think, to learn that when something seems like it's gone on for a long time and you can't see the signs that it's going to change. It becomes more difficult to remember that change is constant. A change we're totally not expecting can happen at literally any time. Anything can happen at any time. And then that takes me back to the dropping the ball at this really essential link, I think, at the Goenka courses, and not emphasizing enough, or not emphasizing at all, because he mentions it, but I wouldn't say he emphasizes it, that like observing the sensations is supposed to be teaching us to naturally be aware that change is constant because the sensations are constantly changing. But sometimes they don't really feel like they are for a while. Like my leg is hurt for years when I've done meditation. The Buddha gave, I think, 41 different types of meditation to the monks, depending on their development, where they were at. And they were all about practicing, recognizing change. So versions of Vipassana. I so wish that there was someone really developed who was incarnated on earth right now. I don't even know if there are any arahants that are living today. I feel like there might not be. They say that Webu Sayadaw was one. I don't think he actually was. I don't think he got out based on what I've read of his writings. He was still too harsh. Just everything here feels so fucking remedial, and there's so much ignorance, and I just hate it. I hate it. And I'm gonna have to live, what, another 45, 50 years at least? Maybe, I don't know. I know the life expectancy for my generation was supposed to be 102. My oldest grandparent, he was like 3 months shy of turning 100 before he passed away. I know it'll change. I know I've made progress that startled me already. Like the most obvious external example is no longer craving alcohol whatsoever. That would have seemed impossible not so long ago, let alone like something that could be achieved through meditation. Yeah, this Sankara is pretty gnarly. I hope a big chunk of it clears before the end of this course. I woke up feeling pretty irritable, which isn't surprising. That's like been the dominant negativity that I've been in before this course for a while. Like anger and irritability with some grief thrown in under there as well. I'm also really hot, even though it's a chilly day and it's chilly in the house. So that also tells me that this anger is coming out. And the sit itself was challenging again. There was physical pain. My fingers hurt, which was a new thing I just started experiencing in the last couple days, and it was the most painful in the sit today. And my right leg started hurting again too. But overall, it wasn't anywhere near as painful as it was in the group sits of Adatan yesterday. So it feels like some stuff is clearing. So that's good. It's lunchtime now on day 9, and I did another sit after the morning sit. And now I'm cold. Like, now the house feels really chilly because the heat from that anger sankara is gone, and I'm a lot less agitated than I was earlier too. Like, I'm cold. It's so interesting to see how that changes and how the sankara is the cause. I cleared a lot in the last 2 group sits of the day. The Adatan sit in the evening, I think it was maybe the most physically painful sit I've ever done. If you've never sat a Vipassana course, I really don't want that to freak you out. It was challenging because this thing that I'm releasing is challenging, and so it's exciting and really a wonderful thing that the sankara is trying to come out. It's just that it's so painful for me, this particular thing, that it's manifesting as a stronger physical pain than I remember. And this is like, I don't know, like my 27th course or something like that. So you don't know when that's gonna happen, right? It just depends on when you've cleared enough for that particular sankara to come up. I managed to stick with the rules of the Adatan for the whole sit, and it's a little more challenging now than it would be at an actual course, simply because I don't have recordings of Goenka during the group sits. For some reason they're not in the app, I'm not sure why. It's just total silence with a gong. And if I had the recordings from the courses, he starts chanting with like 5 minutes left. So that gives you kind of a boon at the very end, and it also lets you know that there's only a little bit more to go. It was radiating throughout the leg, including on the right knee, which I didn't really remember particularly hurting before. And then the pain in the right knee cleared. And then I started to remember this clown course that I took in Brooklyn in like late 2023, I think, with a teacher who also teaches at Yale. I really love clown. There's this purity to it that is unlike anything else I've seen. And I love comedy forever. And after college, I moved to Chicago to study comedy writing and improv at Second City, but it wasn't quite right, and I did some stand-up as well, and that also wasn't right. Stand-up is too hierarchical. You're shutting down hecklers. I was looking for this feminine thing, but I didn't know it yet. Something that had healthy feminine energy in comedy. And then years later, I was in LA and was gonna go to this show, this clown show. And I actually left. Like, I was skipping out before the show started. I forget why, I just didn't feel like staying. But as I was walking out, a friend, C, who I've mentioned in other videos, who gave me a gift when I needed it through Seeds, he happened to be walking in right at that time. So I ended up turning around and coming back in with him. He's the person who told me about clown in the first place. And that felt very like it was meant to happen too. Like, the mutual friend who introduced me to him, he showed up a bunch of different places and times in my life in a way that made me think it was the universe or whatever pointing me toward him. And then he introduced me to C later, who introduced me to clown. Whenever I saw this show, the first like good clown show I'd ever seen, I was laughing hysterically, and I also was sobbing. And I felt the way that people say they feel about like meeting their soulmate. Like, I instantly knew this is what I was looking for all those years. This is what I was looking for in comedy. So when I'm talking about clown, it's like it's almost like of a higher spiritual origin to me, and it feels very aligned with Vipassana as well. And I'm trying to write a clown film as we speak, and I've been struggling with it, but it feels like that's supposed to happen. Like, I'm supposed to create this film about a clown. So anyway, I'm taking this class in Brooklyn with this Yale clown teacher, and I'd avoided taking a class with him for a while, I think because I sensed that what happened would happen. I think this memory came in apparent connection with this pain in my right knee. There was like this Yale self-seriousness, there was a fakeness. It was just terrible in a bunch of different ways. So I think that's why that particular class came in. And I was angry about it as it was happening, and I expressed that on stage, and I could feel certain reactions from male class participants, and so that's in the mix there too. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Like, I remember feeling disdain in particular from one male classmate, and then another couple were just like really rude, and I don't expect that in New York, but I think it's because so many people weren't from New York who were in that class. Like, New York is the one place on earth that I've ever been, let alone lived, where it's like the best place for the feminine, I think, because it's just so much more direct. And I think that doesn't seem intuitive because of like its reputation or something, but I feel like I can express myself there and not get shat on or hated because I'm like a woman who's saying stuff. So obviously I have a strong sankara about all of this. And so yeah, it was just really interesting to see that this pain cleared in my knee, and that memory came in. At the Goenka courses, the strongest banga I ever experienced was during a Satipatthana course. I think my third Satipatthana. Yeah, this was the first course I sat once the centers opened back up after COVID. I think it was like May 2021. I was in Texas, and I drove there from California, where I was living at the time. He reads the text, the Satipatthana Sutta text, to the students, and we also have a copy of it for our own reference, and we can take notes because it's like a little bit more advanced course. You have to have done a certain number of 10-day courses in order to be admitted to the Satipatthana course. And at the end, it says something about how like you can get out in 7 lives, 7 years, 7 minutes, 7 seconds, something like that. It's a series of 7s. And after he read that, I experienced this deep banga because I was thinking like, it doesn't matter what other people do to me. It doesn't matter because I can get out in 7 years out of the human prison. I went to sleep and I was dreaming, and in my dreams I was telling other people in my dreams that I was experiencing banga. I feel it again now as I'm talking. Isn't that interesting? And then I'd wake up and I'd still be experiencing banga, so it went on for hours and hours. And it was because I understood change, this idea of constant change, in a way that I wasn't simply by observing sensations. I assume it must be, you know, often different for different meditators, because there's a reason that the Buddha had 41 different types of meditation that he gave to the ascetics who were learning from him. And then I was thinking a little bit more about the IMC courses as well, and how they don't use the word sankara at all. It isn't even mentioned. They don't, if I'm not mistaken, ever mention equanimity either. And Goenka really emphasizes equanimity, except in a poster on the wall that has a list of the 10 paramis. And I think it certainly is helpful that Goenka emphasizes equanimity and how we should try to have awareness and equanimity when we're meditating. Awareness and equanimity are both paramis. I just feel so blessed that I got to see what they're doing at the IMC, and I have this deeper understanding of Goenka and his approach as well. And it's interesting because, you know, they're coming from the same teacher. Ba Khin is the teacher, and something kind of went awry for both. And now that I do know this, I have to tell other people. I cause misery I experience through my reactions to external things. A lot of stuff in this house is janky. It's a furnished house and I'm like not into the decor at all. It actually bothers me a lot. Thought I would have left before now, but I had like health stuff I had to take care of, and then when I got robbed, that changed my financial situation. So I've been here longer than I originally intended, and the landlord is a cool person and she's treated me well. But I realized while I was cooking tonight that the oven had like shut off halfway or something, and I had that trigger at first. I can't get my basic needs met, and I've gotten really mad about this oven being shitty in the past, like when I first started using it. But tonight, like Goenka talks about the sankara being your finger on the water and it just disappears really quickly. I did have that habit trigger, and then I was able to be equanimous. After the final sit of the day, I took my dog out for a walk, and it's dark, and then coming back, I've also had these triggers about like vandalism and stuff that happens in this area where I'm living more than in any other place I've ever lived. There's a bunch of like broken glass right out in front of the house on the sidewalk, and so we have to walk around it really carefully. I want to make sure my puppy doesn't hurt his paw or whatever. And today, coming back into the house after this walk, instead of going back and rolling in this anger, it's the same sankara, I think, another facet of the same sankara. Like, I can't get my basic needs met to just have whatever, like a safe enough, reliable living situation, like ever. And instead of rolling in all of that, I just picked a piece of glass up. This particularly big piece of glass that I've been looking at for, I don't know, weeks. I felt glad even to be helping to clean it up. When I woke up this morning, I was thinking a lot about this specific clown called Julia. I went to see her show in England in 2024. She won whatever the big prize is at Edinburgh with that show in 2023, and I loved it. It was so feminine, and I think there's a reason that that thought was coming into my head. Like maybe it's time to seek her out. The next sit is the 8 to 9 group sit, the Aditan, and then after that, at a center, Noble Silence would end. So I think I'm gonna try to approximate that in my own way here. I think I might maybe talk a little bit in the live chats, because the point of today, Metta Day, is to learn Mettabana, the loving kindness meditation. And I also realized that's not in the app. We don't have the recording of him teaching Mettabana, so I'll just have to do it myself. But then the other purpose of today, of Metta Day, is for it to act as a buffer to help meditators ease back into regular life in this society. Because on day 10, you also keep up, you know, the regular meditation schedule. You just end up chatting more. And the course itself actually ends day 11 tomorrow at like 7:30 a.m. or so. Oh, and maybe the biggest sign of progress I've seen going through this course is that it wasn't hard at all to not consume any content, even though I had phones by me almost at all times. So I was using the app to do the course. I was obviously live streaming meditations. There wasn't much temptation, and I didn't act on any temptation. And that feels pretty substantial. Can you see a difference in my face? Like I've lightened my load a little bit. It definitely feels like I have. I did what I said earlier. I did look at the comments on Alive. Literally the first comment that I've glimpsed was being cruel because I'm fat. The second one was a guy like attacking my character. Goenka talks about how you know Vipassana is working if something happens in your life that used to, for example, make you angry for 8 hours, and then a similar situation arises, and this time you're only angry for 6 hours, and then gradually it becomes less and less and less. And so those experiences ended up being a good example of this happening. So the earlier comment where the guy was being cruel because I'm fat, it affected me for like 2 sits. Like my response to something like that, it's not gonna make me cry. I wanna like destroy that motherfucker. That is clearly still there as I'm describing it, but it's less. I was aware of how that's more opportunity to be equanimous about how fat my body is right now. It's part of why like I'm feeling more comfortable just being on camera. Part of that is a result of this comment and what I worked through just in that few hours or whatever, doing more Vipassana sits as I'm ending this course. So this is that gift through that shitty person who is being cruel. It was just interesting to see that it was like the second I like poked my head out from like where I've been kind of safely meditating. I mean, the meditation was often very difficult, as you've seen, but you know, like I wasn't out in the world at all. And then as soon as I like peeked around the corner a little bit, it was immediately men being horrible to women, to me as a woman. And you know, with my big Sankara being about how fucking horrible this world is to the feminine. And maybe the most common example of that is men being cruel in different ways to women. So yeah, again, not surprising that I would run into that right away. It's like, because I'm still on that wavelength too, because it's still such a strong Sankara for me. It means I'm gonna keep running into it to give me more opportunities to be equanimous about it and heal it and release it for good. So that was all I did in terms of like kind of going out into the world a little bit. I wanted to share that to keep it real, to underline that that's the reason to do this, because we all have Sankara still, unless you're all the way out, and they can feel horrible. The human experience is having to face that, and Vipassana gives us tools to face it. Typically on Metta days, day 10, you know, when you're talking to people, if you're sitting a course at a center, I would be more out of the meditation by now, I suppose, like out of it in the sense that I would have just been having fun conversations with people probably for a while, and then I wouldn't settle back down into the meditation as quickly. So this is actually giving me more of an opportunity to progress, I think, more today. And I started rereading this book, What the Buddha Taught. This book was highly recommended by Ba Khin in terms of the theory. When you're at a center on day 10 on Metta Day, they'll have books out that you can look at and potentially buy. The Goenka centers do a good job of making sure there's a clear separation between any kind of commercial activity and what's going on at the center. So if you want to buy a book, you buy it from the separate bookstore that is not at the center. The IMC does not make that distinction, which is another problem there that I think has had not great results for them. I think it's part of the reason they haven't scaled as far. They haven't grown as much, because it's really important that that commercial consumer capitalistic thing isn't mixed in, because if it is, then it's no longer pure Dhamma. This is a good book, and it's helping me feel closer to the Buddha's energy. And it was also making me more aware of the difference in the Buddha's energy as compared to Goenka's, which, you know, I'm feeling every time I listen to a discourse in the evenings. It's like a refuge to feel Buddha's energy, and I appreciate this book a lot. I found that it's difficult to find books that aren't like original source texts that are actually written by people who practice what the Buddha taught you to practice, which is what Vipassana is. A lot of stuff can get confused, you know, like if a text is written by somebody who doesn't actually have the experience of doing the thing. So I expressly wanted to find a book written by somebody who had that experience, but I'm actually not certain that he did. I just know that Ba Khin recommended this book. I just finished listening to the day 10 discourse, and I think I figured something out. I think it's that Goenka is conflating the role that sensations play in the origination of dukkha and the role of observing sensations as an option in order to use that as a vehicle to observe anicca, constant change. I think that's what's more specifically gone awry. And then this makes me think, am I really supposed to play this role? Like in the day 10 discourse, it's him sharing his story, which I always really appreciate. And it's just, I have a chill as I'm saying this. It's just so clear that he lived out the role that he was meant to live in that life. In hindsight, it's just perfect. And he was an international businessman. He knew how to scale organizations internationally. And that's why the Goenka centers are, you know, the most prolific of any center teaching Vipassana. In doing this course now, especially listening to his discourses in more detail than I have in years, it's like now I can make more of a connection. And also because I'd read that book a year ago or something too. It seems like I'm better able to pinpoint where things have gone awry. But at this point in my life, nobody is interested in listening to me. It really doesn't seem like they are at all. And then it makes me think like, well then is this film I'm trying to make going to be the thing that gets me more visibility? And it isn't me, Rachel, like all this stuff sounds fun, but it isn't about a personal aspiration. If Seeds is therefore visible, because that's the thing too, like the economic system has to change in order for the world to be set up in such a way that a lot of people can more easily actually practice if they're ready to. And maybe a lot of people that are alive as humans right now aren't ready to yet. That might be true also, but maybe a lot would if they didn't have to work a 9-to-5 job, and that's where Seeds can come in to support them. Scaling Vipassana is baked into the Seeds model. And then in the sit just now at the last Adaton at 6 p.m., my right leg really was hurting a good deal again. Then the pain went away for a while. Like it was really showing me how the Sankara was moving and changing. And then it got so bad again that I actually did move my leg again. Like I said earlier in the week, I don't remember doing that since like maybe my first course. In the back of my neck, I was feeling that area. I'm aware of it almost all the time anyway, but I was really aware of it during that Adaton session, the last Adaton of this course at 6 p.m. today. And then it seemed to clear as well. It's shown up in past life sessions I've done with practitioners and stuff. It was this Latin singer's life and I was murdered and they stabbed me through the back of the neck. And I think that Sankara from that death injury is connected to aligning with people who are going to betray me because I was betrayed in that life, aligning with people who want to hurt me and like keep me down. That was a big theme sort of in that life. They didn't want me using my voice. It wasn't a coincidence that they went for the back of the throat. And then after the sit, as I was listening to the discourse, I had this really strong craving to like play chess. I had to tell myself like, oh, just wait. If you still have the craving in 8 minutes, then you can do it. 2 more minutes, whatever. I did that for long enough that it started to go away and I just started to feel tired. But it was just interesting because like that's never happened before when listening to a discourse or anything. And it's like a dumb thing. Like chess to me, I like playing chess and I play a lot of chess. It's like a simpler version of Civilization 4, which I also was really craving playing earlier in this course, and I still want to play it tomorrow when the course is over because they're games about war and they're masculine and they're about logic. It's like they're an approximation for understanding Earth up to this point in recorded history because it's been so over masculinized and so like I've talked about a bunch heavily in that wounded masculine energy. So it's like I think I have this craving to play those games because I have gotten pretty good at Civilization 4. I'm not that good at chess yet, but I'm getting better. It's some like addiction to that. Being in this earth energy, understanding the masculine unhealthiness of it at a greater depth and what's a stronger expression of that than war. And then also I use that craving, like the craving was showing up to get me to not sit with a bigger Sankara that was trying to release. So it was like the Sankara was doing all this different stuff to try and mess with me. And then like when the craving didn't work, then it started to make me lethargic. Just figuring out this Goenka thing seems big. And then it makes me wonder what my path will be to try and help with all of this. Because at this moment, it just still seems like I'm still aligning with that energy of being hated and like people men especially trying to knock me down, even through the YouTube algorithm, just like stupid modern versions of these energies expressing themselves. But the effect is that I'm staying in anger and frustration. And what I'm trying to share isn't reaching the people that I think can receive it nearly to the extent that it could and hopefully will. So maybe there will be a big shift coming. I almost feel like I should just continue this course. I shouldn't in the sense that I have real world obligations that I need to take care of early in the work week, but maybe I'll just keep meditating more and maybe I'll start doing Adatons more often because it feels like there's more in there that's trying to clear. It's just that this course is too short for it to like totally get out because it's some of the gnarliest stuff that I'm carrying, you know? I just finished the course. And I feel so much gratitude to Goenka for all the work he did for so many years so that it's easy for people like me to have been able to go to a center in the first place. And to now be able to do the course just like with my phone at my home. It's such a wonderful gift and I appreciate it very much. Sorry, I'm crying. Yeah, I just feel really lucky. So it's been nearly 3 weeks since I finished the course, and I am a lot less angry. My dog used to do this thing where, like, if I was getting pissed off about a corporation screwing people over or something like that, he would come over to me and try and cuddle and get some pets, and he was really sensitive to it. Like, he would do this even if I didn't think that I'd been that upset. And now that isn't really a thing because I'm getting mad a lot less often. I'm also way less tired. And this is a huge deal because before I started the eating disorder recovery, one of the reasons I did it was because I was so exhausted all the time that I could barely function. So I'm addressing the physical causes, and then thankfully the Vipassana is helping to take care of the rest. A side benefit of that is that my house is getting cleaner. As a result, I have more energy to take care of the things I need to take care of. The plants here are healthier. I'm watering them more often. And another piece of that is that the Vipassana made me more aware of my unhealthy nighttime habits, like consuming content until way later than my body was telling me that it wanted to go to sleep. And that kind of sounds dumb, I think, because I was certainly already aware that this habit wasn't good for me. But a big lesson of Vipassana is about the difference between intellectual understanding and experiential practice. It's like the Vipassana brought the unhealthiness of this habit into sharper focus. And at the same time, it made it an easier part of the problem to address. And so that's kind of how it goes in my experience. You keep gradually releasing the things holding you down. And sooner or later, if you keep practicing, it amounts to these huge positive changes in your life. I still recommend Goenka for your first few courses because his structure is sound. And after that, I'd suggest an IMC course to learn the sequence that Ba Khin used to teach and to also be reminded of the most important thing about practicing, that the key to making progress is observing anicca, constant change. And I should also make sure to say that my views in this video are obviously based on my development in Vipassana at this time. So if you're a more developed meditator and you notice that I'm stating something incorrectly or misunderstanding something about Vipassana, please totally let me know. I appreciate y'all so much for watching this crazy long video. If you liked the video or you just want to help out in sharing it with more people, you can obviously hit like, you can leave a comment, that helps a lot too, and or share it with a friend, maybe someone that you hope will start meditating. If you'd like to subscribe, I talk a lot about spirituality here. And as mentioned, I've been doing meditation vertical lives if you'd ever like to join. Ba Khin used to talk about how the gong of Vipassana has rung. So that means it's meant to spread during this time. And relatedly, I think we're on the cusp of energies changing on Earth so that the wounded masculine that I talk about in this video is no longer dominating virtually everything. I've actually come to believe that that's the inadvertent mission of Trump and Elon Musk to make it super evident to as many people as possible that these energies are now defunct. Healthy, divine, feminine energy is coming in. And these yin and yang energies are present in all of us, regardless of our gender. And I've become convinced that perhaps the biggest example of that unhealthy energy that is holding many of us down is that which is present in the current economic system. So I think we need a new economic system that incorporates a healthy balance of healthy masculine and healthy feminine energies to align with these changes. And so that's what Seeds is. Seeds makes it possible to help someone in need and actually build wealth because you were kind enough to give. You can make a gift to help someone and you'll receive Seeds cryptocurrency in thanks. And it's super appreciated when you do. I'm going to be teaching a live 2025 course, How to Build Abundance in Cryptocurrency, which supports Seeds so that 100% of the value of the gifts coming through the Seeds system can go to people in need. So stay tuned for that as well. I'll be talking about it on YouTube. And like I touched on, the long-term vision of Seeds is to support as many people as possible so that they're freed from the 9-to-5 jobs that too often enrichen oligarchs so that they have the support and the space that they need to develop spiritually. And now I'll leave you with my final thoughts from day 11 of the course. It's day 11 in the morning. I feel, as I often do at the end of courses, especially in the last discourse this morning, just so much gratitude to Goenka for all the work he did over so many decades so that someone like me was born in a country half a world away from him, from where the Buddha lived, could go and learn how to do this. I know I'm crying a little bit, but underneath of that, I feel so much lighter and so much, there's like joy starting to come on the surface. I feel so much better than I did when I started this. And I'm gonna keep practicing for the rest of this life. And if I can't get out in this one, beyond this life too. Okay. Bye-bye.